we will continue to support initiatives like this so that we will help people to see that they are not alone. Show me a man who comes out of this crisis and is alone and nobody. The temptation is for him to probably commit suicide or to go into a serious situation. But once you come out and you are embraced with people who love, you are embraced with people who care, you are embraced with people who stood for you when you were there and people who are ready to stand with you when you are out, you can imagine you will begin to recover very quick. We had a program after the release of our, is it Greenfield University students and some of the students of Mando School of Forestry. And I met with them. We call them as Global Peace at the Catholic Media Center. I think that was where we had a meeting with them. It was a fantastic conversation. But there were many things they told us that I will not forget some. One of them just said that, look, for her to go into that situation is not a big thing. If she moves into the market, and in the market she just see and identify a particular type of food flask, she will start running, thinking they're there. Because she remember when she was in that camp, that was the kind of food flask they used to bring food. So what? So sometimes when you see people walking and they are not themselves, you don't know what they're going through. So thank you for this initiative. We join the world to celebrate or commemorate this day, but we want to remind ourselves that if you are not a victim today, you may be a victim tomorrow. If you are not a victim tomorrow, someone closer to you may be a victim next tomorrow. So we must promote love, care, and support for victims. But for our government, I will simply say one most important primary role of government is to secure lives and properties. Are we getting that in our country? Those in power must sit up. It is not enough to tell us that you have, I think there's a term the former minister used to use about dealing with insecurity, that they have neutral. No, I don't like the one top. No, there's one that they use that they have dislodged. No, it's not even dislodged. They have technically defeated them. And technically, they are still kidnapping us. Technically, they are still tormenting us. We don't like that. I think Nigerians have suffered enough. If we want to really commemorate this day, we must remind our government to sit up. When you send your daughter, your children, your loved ones to school, your hope is one day they graduate. How you imagine a mother just hearing in the night that her daughter has been kidnapped? You know there will be no sleep that night. My nephew who grew up with me, he is now in Biham University, school at Bethel Baptist High School. He has been with me since when he was 5, and he's in Biham now. We enrolled him at Bethel Baptist High School. The night we were told that they kidnapped students, within 5-10 minutes, I know what I saw from my wife. My Sunday, see my Sunday. Oh, I didn't even understand the language anymore. I'm a man, so I was courageous, hoping to
Should you join us briefly via Zoom for our goodwill message?
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning. Can you hear me? So sorry about the technical difficulties.
So I hear you.
About the technical
So I
difficulties.
hear you.
My name is Carolina Buendia. I am a research analyst of the Religion and Inclusive Societies team, and I am part of the team leading the initiative.
Should we join us briefly via Zoom for our goodwill message?
Should I continue? Should I continue? I'm happy to be part of this event. I'm happy to be part of this event. It's an important conversation. So sorry about the technical difficulties.
So I hear you. So I hear you.
There's some issue because my name is Carolina Buendia. There's some issue because I'm research analyst of religion. So I'm not sure if it's clear what I am saying. I'm gonna try again. Okay, now it works. Thank you for your patience. My name is Carolina Buendia. I am the research analyst for the Religion and Inclusive Societies team at the United States Institute of Peace, and I am working on the initiative on religion and psychosocial support. The United States Institute of Peace is a national, nonpartisan, independent institute founded by Congress and dedicated to the proposition that a world without violent conflict is possible, practical, and essential for the US and for global security. In conflict zones abroad, the Institute works with local partners to prevent, mitigate, and resolve violent conflict. To reduce future crises and the need for costly interventions, USIP works with governments and civil society to build local capacities to manage conflict peacefully. The Institute pursues its mission by linking research, policy, training, analysis, and direct action to support those who are working to build a more peaceful, inclusive world. We are very pleased and proud to collaborate with OTBI in an event on this very important topic. USIP has been thinking about and researching the role of religious actors in peace and conflict for over 3 decades. And we recognize that in countries experiencing social upheaval and high levels of violence and polarization, mental health can be a serious challenge to post-peace scenarios and to peace building. Since the spring of 2021, USIP has been identifying best practices in psychosocial support to better facilitate collaboration between religious actors and mental health professionals who provide services to conflict-affected communities, including trauma-affected displaced persons. This thematic area of work focused initially on Colombia and Venezuela in Latin America, and has since expanded to diverse contexts, offering practical and evidence-based recommendations to relevant stakeholders. Research has shown that there is a higher prevalence of mental health disorders and behavioral problems among displaced persons, which can increase distrust between persons and communities, make unemployment more prevalent, and hinder displaced persons' integration into new communities and societies. Furthermore, when facing major life crises, for example, the experience of violence or forced displacement, people turn to their faith for meaning and solace. Religious institutions, spirituality, and religious beliefs have shown to play a very significant role in the provision of psychosocial support. Faith-based and religious institutions have an important role in mental health and psychosocial support processes, both at the individual and community levels. These actors have positive impacts on survivors of trauma who have been displaced by violent conflict or otherwise affected by strengthening resilience and by reinforcing local processes aiming to restore social fabric. Due to a better understanding of the context and because of their closeness to the communities, these organizations and these actors can be better able to catalyze pre-existing adaptation and resilience mechanisms within the community. Religious practices can be an element of psychosocial support that should be complemented rather than replaced by other forms of mental health and psychosocial support. This approach is called faith-sensitive mental health and psychosocial support, which refers to any mental health and psychosocial programming that is responsive to the faith of the affected individual and or community, regardless of whether the service provider are secular or faith-based. Not only are religious actors on the front lines of responding to the needs of post-displaced communities and individuals and others who have experienced violence, but faith-sensitive mental health and psychosocial support can also offer innovative approaches towards connection, healing, and support. Besides, among mental health and psychosocial support professionals, there is lack of knowledge of the value of local religious and cultural sources of healing for survivors of conflict-related trauma, and how to properly address the religious, cultural, and spiritual aspects of trauma care. The pilot program in Colombia and Venezuela identified promising practices on how to link religious actors with mental health service providers and unlock the potential for religious actors to provide mental health and psychosocial support to the communities that they serve. It also opened opportunities to teach mental health professionals how to integrate religious or spiritual practices, rituals, and norms into their mental health services, making them more capable of responding effectively to the needs of the communities that deem religious an important part of their identity. Creating spaces that foster that dialogue between religious and mental health and psychosocial support actors to exchange knowledge and concrete experiences is an essential strategy to contribute to those goals by allowing both sides to increase their understanding of the added value that each one brings to the attention of trauma survivors. Additionally, this helps facilitating trust building and respect that can foster collaborative work tailored to the needs of the communities, improving the quality and accessibility of the interventions. USAP recognizes the pressing need to bridge the gap between religious actors, mental health professionals, and other government and non-government actors tasked with the psychosocial support of displaced populations and others who have experienced violent conflict. Our initiative aims through a community of practice to provide training, connection, and other capacity building resources to equip religious and mental health professionals from conflict-affected communities with the skills and knowledge to identify mental health needs and provide support more effectively. This can mean to incorporate religion and spirituality so that it's better suitable to the needs and coping mechanisms of the individual or the community, but it also means to be able to refer to a specialized mental health services, people that need specialized support. It is our hope that this event, as well as future cooperation with those of you in the audience, will result in more effective, integrated, and inclusive programs in support to forced displaced communities and trauma survivors. Thank you.
emphasis on mental health, because we all know the victims of trauma victims, when not well managed, they can easily move into what we call the post-traumatic stress disorders. And she tried to lay more emphasis on the roles of religious and political actors in ameliorating such effects. So thank you one more time, Mrs. Carolina Samento. So to come to the team this morning, we will be discussing fostering partnership for psychological support between the government and religious actors to address trauma. And to start this conversation this morning, I would like to welcome two of our religious leaders, Imam Noura Ashafa and Pastor James Abel Wiye from Interfaith Meditation Center, Kaduna. Please, a round of applause would be well appreciated this morning. You're welcome to the podium, please. Imam Ashafa and James Abel, they are religious actors. And this morning, they will tell us the role, the contribution of religion and religious actors to foster resilience. Please put your hands together one more time as we welcome both Imam Ashafa and Pastor James Wiye. You're welcome, sir.
Peace be with you. I can see Imam is still getting to come. You know, I have a crucifix that I got from Finland. And the lady who gave me the crucifix said to me, James, when you are talking about peace, wear this crucifix. So I have the crucifix now. I don't look like the Imam. With that cap, you think I'm from Yobe State. So having said that, you are welcome again to this great meeting. We hope to co-present. Having also superimposed the protocol on the protocol that was, so to say, established by the Global Peace Foundation country director. He said on that protocol, he also is going to continue. I continue on that protocol again on that. What do you say, Imam?
Myself, I ride on the protocol of the existing protocol that was followed by Pastor James Movewi, who follow Oga Reverend JJ, and JJ who follow Father JJ Ja Stephen.
Well done.
So thank you very much, brothers and sisters. It was a great honor to be here with you today, and to cry together. After we cry together, to embrace one another together, to look deep as much as how we can extend those care to our loved ones, who are our neighbors, some members of our family, some far, far away from our family. We only heard what is happening to them, and we feel it in our heart, as what happened last week to this student, and what will continue to happen to our students. Somebody says, why is it now only women's schools, girls' schools are the subject of target? In the last 5 months to this moment, it's only girls' school, either federal government colleges, either in higher institutions that have been the target, and they become the victims of bandit taking them away. Why is it? It has been a struggle to get girl child into school, and now the target is getting them out of school because of these circumstances. It's really, really big thing. But we are going to go on a journey with you for some few minutes to have a deeper reflection over the subject of our discussion, which is embracing resilience and overcoming the impact, the trauma impacts, and looking at the role of both the government agencies and religious actors in this direction.
As a religious activist or an actor, I also have experienced a kind of trauma, which from time to time comes back. The trauma of having lost an arm in activities geared towards protecting the church a couple of years back. It took me 3 years to walk through this trauma. And at that point, I had started working with Imam Ashafa, and the temptation to take vengeance in order also to transfer the kind of pains that I have had always engulfed me until the day I decided, through an assistant by another religious leader, that I should let go my pains from the church on the altar. From where my pains came, my pains was released. So that is the story. I have 3 years of working with the issue of losing an arm in the fight in Kaduna, particularly in activities geared towards protecting the church from our perceived then enemies who were also propelled by certain trauma that they have. They couldn't transform it, they transferred it, as we also have transferred ours that we could not transform.
To all bear witness to this reality, that very often our parents tell us stories of trauma they went through, stories of unhealed memories of pains their own parent or their foreparent have gone through. And today, those stories telling us and transferring those pain to us is what makes us today to have where we have the instability in our nation. Across the 6 geopolitical zones, in every zone, you have the children who have not seen war telling you what their parents have gone through. And instead of saying never again, he's saying we're going to revenge. The language of revenge is what is hitting the day. And that's why from the southeastern part of this country, where you can talk of the Biafran War and the pain of Biafran War that goes into the children and the children to the society, or to the south with the Niger Delta, the challenge of exploitation and massive exploitation by the big oil companies, which consequences led to most of our parents to lost out the resources they have, access to their farming land, fishing ground, etc., and the consequences on their today, which make their children to take arms, and arms become Niger Delta more known with militant than the good, loving, caring people we know in those days. And when you go and move back to the north central, you'll find histories of persecution, marginalization, and exploitation that are done on our forefathers. And today, the children were saying, no, we can't take that anymore. And it's led to so many other driving factors that we see. And the same, you can go to the northeast, northwest, southwest. Everybody have a story to tell you how they've been traumatized because of one reason or the other, either politically, economically, socially, culturally, or as regard the issue of the federal character, unquote, or federal state of citizenship as a Nigerian. You are more Nigerians based on where you are and at what point you are in. So many traumas we are going through, and we are all traumatizing ourselves today, and we can see that reality. When we talk of trauma, what exactly do we mean, Pastor?
Yeah, of course. Thank you again. Trauma, to an understanding, is a thing that comes an expression of anguish, either in words or in an act. It's an issue of expressing griefs, lamentation, taking our sufferings to another level that causes us not to stand within the concept of rationalization of the challenges that are confronting us, having given us also the background that the north-middle belt dichotomy that also escalated in the Christian Muslim challenges that we have are all part of those narratives that poisons the heart. And once it poisons the heart, it creates grievance. And when grievance are not processed, it leads to anger. And when anger is not controlled, it leads to violence. And violence brings about trauma of different dimensions. That is why today, in the whole world, we have about 8 billion inhabitants of the world. And these inhabitants of the world are we have challenges in DRC, we have challenges in the global north, global south. We cannot just pin down to that, but Nigerians of about 250 million are experiencing one form of trauma or stress, as the case may be. And so if this is what is happening in our country, the Christian population in Nigeria, Christian and Muslim together, is about 80% of, about 90% to to 95% of the 250 million. And so what a challenge. And no wonder the Bible will say the harvest is plenteous, the laborers
verse 155 to 157, and Quran chapter 29, verse 2 to 3, have told us about trials and tribulation. They are part and parcel of human nature. We'll go through this. We are going to face the reality. We are going to be trial and tribulations will come, and the consequences is going to be the trauma we will see today, the overwhelming reality of what we do not expect to happen to us will happen to us. And when this thing happens, how do you deal with it? And that's why the Quran told us clearly in the Holy Quran, chapter 2, verse 155 to 157, when it says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Asiban Nasa, and yutraku an yakula amanna fahum la yuftanun. When you say you have faith and you believe in Allah and the last day, and we shall not test you, Allah told us very clearly in the Quran, certainly we shall test you with something of fear. I mentioned 5 important components of fear. These 5 important components are elements that we talk of trauma. The first one is fear, al-khawf, fear of unknown, fear of circumstances, something grievous, something beyond your control may happen to you. The second trauma is al-jaw'an, hunger. Allah said, we test you with hunger. Poverty. In Nigeria today, we know what hunger is. My brother have talked about, he talked when my brother, Reverend John is talking, he talked about with the stability and the palliative. So they say they're going to palliate the mouth of some people who are working in government. How about those who are not working in government? We know what it is. So when Allah says he's going to test us with hunger, we know what it is in Nigeria, what hunger really means. Because what you have for the month is not taking you for a week anymore. So you know what I'm talking about. Number 3, Allah told us, we started with loss of your wealth, capital, economic bankruptcy. You know that better than I do. Some of us who are running small, medium enterprises, with the oil money, eating all the gain, eating everything, you know that your economy, your money is servicing engine, not able to service, to have a return that you can put into your mouth and put into the business again. Then we know that the bankruptcy is a key important economic bankruptcy. We have moral bankruptcy also on the other side, but we're talking about economic bankruptcy, economic collapse of your assets and resources. These are source of trauma. Number 3, you talk about loss of lives, loved ones. When your loved one, you got them missing, they fall into the hand of bandit. Somebody go on the street just because he's interested in money he killed. He collect the money and still kill the innocent victims. We saw this happen in so many ways. So when somebody you have invested so much in him and suddenly you are losing him, you know what it means. As my brother have said, when your child, your only child you have invested everything on him and he went to the university and you just hear that somebody has come and pick him away from the university and you never see him again. You know what it means really. These are what we call. So Allah told us, expect something that's something precious to you. You may lose it at any point in time. This is going to happen in your journey of life. And number 5, it says, well, anfus, and then the loss of your assets, capital asset, physical asset. you may be losing it. You have your house, you are comfortable, you retire, and somebody come to the village. You build a home in the village, think everything is okay. And somebody come one day and just put petrol on fire and then burn everything. And you that live in a house now, you are looking for a rented apartment to put your head. You have to sleep in primary schools. My brother who have just come back from Katsina will tell a lot of story about what they have seen with those people who are once upon a time landlords, but today they're sleeping on the streets. These are some of these things. So Allah told us that we are going to be tested with these 5 important elements. And these are elements that talk about, that lead us to what the subject of our discussion: fear of unknown, loss of your property, loss of your asset, loss of loved ones, people who are dear to you, state of hunger and extreme poverty hitting you. Then when you have this, automatically you know trauma is going to happen. And that's Allah say, but whenever we affect you with this, then the role of religious actor coming. Kul inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Whenever we accept you with this disaster and calamity, you agree that indeed we come from Allah and to him is our return. When you hold on to this, you put faith in God. The destiny, the concept of destiny play a very important role. And when you have faith in that, and in destiny, I was saying positive and negative can come at any time, and you have a spiritual leader who will lead you through, then and then, you know you have a future assured healing process will come.
You see, that's why Imam had just quoted what we say on Ash Wednesday. From the dust that were created, and unto the dust thou shalt return. And he has just quoted that in the Quran. So we are glad that there are these common grounds that we have. But look, last Sunday, at a village on your way to the Chukun village, Chukun, not the Chukun local government, a man was identified. This is not far, it just happened last week. They went into the church. He was a local chief. And the man who came, they didn't know who to pick. Somebody then went out. They came with about 10 motorcycles. And then a hooded man went and touched on the chief. And they went there and brought him out of the church on a Sunday morning. And then the mother says, her only child, please kill me and leave my only child. And they said, ma, they use what they call gele, what she ties a covering on her head and bind her son, and took him out. And a few meters away, she had a gunshot. They used her own cloth to bind her son and kill her son. What do you think that will do to that woman? So we are suffering various kinds of violence. Some, the 3 types that we might want to look at quickly, as my colleague begin to recommend, is that 1, we have what we call man-made, which is happening in this country. And I'm sure for those who have Naira in the bank, the value of the Naira has reduced by about 50% or thereabout. So you can see some will be crying, and some will get stressed, and some will get traumatized. All their saving has been reduced to half. There are self-inflicted trauma, and there are community-inflicted trauma. There are also ecologically induced. And no wonder in Hausa they say, Limang, Gatangawa. The first responders to trauma are religious leaders. When there is trauma in the society, they go to a religious leader. I was wondering what Reverend Father Stephen Ojekba did, because he is now traumatized. Who shall he go to? And I understand in the Catholic we have confession. On Saturdays we go for confession. On that Saturday we hear a lot of things. Only the Father knows what he's passing through when he listens to those confessions. How do you process yourself before helping others? There is a saying in Africa. Africa says, medicine man held herself. And this is why we feel it is imperative for religious actors to begin to share resilience. What are those methodologies? What do we do as religious leaders when everybody runs to us? If there is challenge, quick in Afghanistan, they look for the religious leaders. When there is war between Hamas and Israel, they look for religious leaders. When there is killing in Mali, if there is killing in Burkina Faso, they look for religious leaders. The first responders to the challenge we had over the empires in West Africa, those who could truly pierced through the wall were religious leaders. And in every facet of life, the religious personality is receiving. I do know that there are other psychotherapies that my colleague will be talking about, but remember, everybody goes to you when they lost their loved ones. You go to do give them what is it? Is it Ostra unction? The last sacrament, extra unction. You say I've forgotten my catechism. So they go and you give the last one. How do you feel when you are burying a victim? What comes to you? So we suffer all this trauma, and the Muslim have a good way of saying it. You can, okay, my friend today did not wear his shroud. He said he begin to wear white dresses so that when he dies, we will not go and look for the shroud. That we should just bury him with the cloth on his body. But today you will not die.
Thank you very much. All I need is just another 50 years.
Well, like Ariane.
Just,
anyway.
I know Hayab won't pray for me. Just 50 years, the rest can go. I dash past for the rest. If I can get 50 years extra. And that talks to us about what are the coping mechanisms? The coping mechanism, I have 5 important coping mechanisms I was able to draw. One is the power of prayer and meditation. The very important thing when they brought it to us, the imam or the pastor will tell you, let's pray. Then they tell you, have a time to yourself. Very often, because you have lost your self-esteem. A trauma victim have a sense of loss of self-esteem, loss of honor, loss of dignity, loss of state of mind, loss of stability and balance. So the first thing that comes is, let's go to pray. So religious actors, one of the important contributions they bring is prayers and meditation. You pray, you meditate, you believe, and then that's about transferring everything to God. And then the second important component for us as Muslims is listening to the Quranic recitation. Read the Quran and listen to the scripture. Let the Quran touch to you. This time you are not praying, but you listen, the Quran is talking to you. And then when you read on your own and you listen, you are committing and a positive energy come in and drove away the negative energy within us. So it's a time of pause in your life. Just put a pause. Stop thinking. Just put a pause and have a deeper reflection. And this is the moment we call it halwa, where you withdraw from public space and have a moment of silence, a moment of deeper reflection. And the third one, which has to do with us, is the issue of counseling and guidance. We counsel you, religious leaders, or you get somebody, or a man or a woman, a father or a mother, Amira or Amir, to bring you together and counsel you, take you out of those pains, discuss with you. The counseling more of listening to you than what? Than putting you through. It's not prescriptive, it's ability to listen to you or to go on that journey. So counseling and guidance become the third most important component. The fourth important component, which I believe in Islam we do, is about believing destiny, believing Allah's decree. So it's inbuilt mechanism to say everything is about qadar. Whatever happened to you, good or bad, they have a purpose from God. So you don't blame yourself so much for what happened to you. Neither do you blame God for say, why God is unfair to me? Why shouldn't this thing happen to me? God is testing your faith in order to empower you. And to test your faith as a student in the university, you have a time to go to classroom or not to go to classroom. And by the day of your exams is there. It's what you write, you get. Nobody is forcing you here. They don't cane you for coming late or not coming or doing that. But you know that you have, at the end of the day, you have a result. And that important talk about believe in destiny. That also serves as a coping mechanism to throw everything back to God. So, oh, we got ourselves here, but you can always take us away. And it tells you, Quran chapter 29, verse 2 and 3, tell you are not the first. Many people have gone through that processes and they will come out of it. So you are not the first, and you have role model, religious actors, religious icon who have gone through various traumatic situations, men and women, and whom you need to copy from them. That's number 4. And number 5, we call it the family and social support. Family and social support have been the very important tools we use in the processes as religious actors in bringing people together. That's why we rejoice with those who rejoice, and we mourn with those who are mourning and grieving. Pastor.
Time will not permit us to go deep into this, but we want to give the following recommendation. I know Imam will always want to end with a quote. So I leave that special ending benedictory presentation.
Before you go into that, Pastor, please permit me to mention overcoming trauma impact. We talk about the challenge of stigmatization. It's one important element in overcoming trauma. How are you able to overcome stigmatization? I matan Boko Haram, ai mun san sai, ai fulanin daji sun gama da gidansu. So these women who have been victims of abuse, SGBB, gender-based violence, when they come out, they tag the family as this or that and this or that. How did they get out of that? It's another important one.
Not the women alone, also men cry because they are also abused sexually.
So
yeah.
Abused today, but in these communities, you can. It's not just the lady being raped; men are raped also. Men are abused. So the next, how do you manage breaking the reintegration process? How do you reintegrate? How do you bring with all this stigmatization, etc., etc.? It's another important component we need to reflect over, and we do reflect. Stress disorder for the remaining religious actors and state actors who are working on this area. The pastor or the sister, she has so much mechanism to take care of herself. So she's a saint. She don't know. And many of us collapse because of so much we have had, so much we take in, and with nobody to download, to detoxicate those negative energies we receive from these brothers we have here. And then the last one is about the challenge of lack of formal faith-based trauma care center. Formal faith-based trauma care centers, we lack so many of these. It's not there. And in government center, you have clinical, we don't have spiritual, moral, psychological aspect in most of our clinic where there is a trauma center in those particular areas. And then the next one is unfortunately proliferation of trauma experts, faith, medicine men. A lot of proliferation. A lot of people think they have everything, but they end up exploiting the victims, abusing the victims. And we have those challenges right now in the face of very minority people who are of faith in those particular areas.
Yeah.
Recommendations.
I'm sure we have gone past our 15 minutes, but pardon us, these are two presentations in one. We're about ending with this recommendation, which are not totally the total sum of recommendation. I'd like to start with the Catholic Church that our brother belongs and we belong to from inception before we protested. Because these faith-based training are important. You hear so many things and you don't get to someone. I recall when my wife died, usually when people die, I say, look, take heart, the Lord has given, the Lord has taken. But when my wife died, it was different. It was not that the Lord has taken it so badly. So, later that actually helped me out of my trauma quickly. So that the Lord has given women. So why don't we give them capacity to do that? And of course, women can be the best caregivers if they are empowered. then this trauma care center that my imam has mentioned, we need to spring them up in all the geopolitical zones of Nigeria and have a care center with trained people. And this training, it is not just once, because the dynamics of the society and conflict that brings trauma keep increasing every day. And we have to make the place an effective place. Then on this other side, before my colleague do his benedictory, I don't know what you call this in Islam. So he will do that later with some quotation, I'm sure, is to say traditional caregiving techniques should be harmonized, documented, codified for the African traditional method of psychosocial healing and counseling, where rituals and other things are done and people get out of their trauma as quick as they have gotten into it. So with these few recommendations, we want to submit that it is not ended. Research into various forms need to be done. Africa has her method. We should look at the African method vis-a-vis the psychosocial, that is the clinical, and then of course, one that we have about 8 billion people belonging to one form of religion or the other. Religious leaders are the laborers and the women are the harvesters. The children will be protected. Our nation will be de-traumatized if we follow some of these recommendations. God bless Nigeria.
So finally, as my colleagues have said, one thing we believe are people of faith: God has an answer for everything. God has an answer. And looking at that phrase, God have an answer to everything. If trauma is about grief, if trauma is about sorrow, if trauma is about pains, if trauma is about trials and tribulation in our journey of life, uncomfortable zone we find ourselves in. Then I was just sitting down at drag, coming out this morning, and I saw a quotation from a lady. I hope she's a lady. If not, she's a she or he, Maria Fontaine. Maria Fontaine is a lady. She's an icon. For me, she's an icon because her quotation, she make a reference that make the importance of this meeting a summary that the solution lies in people of faith. For a trauma, if people are traumatized, the best solution lies because the healing mechanism comes from them. And I want to quote her, she says, with God, for every grief, God has gladness. For every
grief, God has gladness.
And for
every pain, He has healing balm. For every pain, He has a healing balm.
Then
For every sorrow, God has comfort.
For every sorrow we go through,
God has comfort.
And finally,
for every test
that you run through, He
has triumph.
For every test,
He has a triumph for you.
For our journey of life. So this shows to us clearly that no matter the situation, God loves us. But we need to let our brothers know and sisters who are primary victims, secondary victims, that they were loved by the divine, and the divine really loved them and He cared much for them. Thank you very much for giving us that opportunity.
So much, Imam Ashafa and Pastor James Wuye. Please, another round of applause will go a long way. Thank you so much. One most beautiful thing I love about them is, like in our local palace, we call it chemistry. The chemistry between both of them is so interesting that we're like, wow. So these two faith, these two religion can work together and harmonize together and speak to us, because we all know how one of the biggest cause of violence outside religion. And these two people are able to come together to discuss on the way or the role of religion in being able to ameliorate the impact of trauma. One more time, we want to appreciate you all. Thank you so much, Imam Ashafa and Pastor James Wuye. We would briefly like to go to our second item tonight. This afternoon, we'll discuss unpacking trauma and its social impact. Unpacking trauma and its social impact. we'll be inviting Sister Anne Falola to give us a talk on unpacking trauma and its social impact. Please, round of applause as we welcome Sister Anne Falola. You're welcome, sister.
I think it's still morning, good morning, or good afternoon. I am going to establish my own protocol. And my protocol is good morning or good afternoon, brothers and sisters. And I follow the example of Jesus. I say, good morning, friends. Because Jesus said, I call you friends. We are friends because we share a common cause. Thank you very much. And I'm really happy that I'm following this very important and noble example of our imam and the pastor. You really touch life just by your being. Also to thank Father Ojapa for giving us this opportunity. It's a wonderful thing. And I think it's an example of what trauma does if you process it positively, you know. And I can't leave Reverend Ajab, who was my boss when I worked in a Women Interfaith Council in Abuja. He is, I think he's still our board chairman. And thank you for all you do. And my dear brothers and sisters, I'm really happy to be here. I am Anne Falola. I'm a Yoruba woman. Because when you said it is like I'm from Turkey. I am Anne Olayemi Falola. And in Abuja, I lived for 8 years, and it helped me to look for solution to our common problem as Nigerians. So I thank the city of Abuja, our Federal Capital Territory, for giving that to me. I am a missionary sister, as you can see. My congregation is Our Lady of Apostles. I have my sister there, Sister Santa Modi is here. Yes. And we've been working in Nigeria for over 100 years, especially with women. So we have some experience of working with women. And if I ask Nigerians, one of the characteristics of being Nigerian, if you mention 3, we don't have time to start doing brainstorming. I'm sure resilience will come up, isn't it? And that often throws a question at me. If our resilience comes from denial of problem, of trauma, or it comes from embracing our vulnerability and processing and unpacking our trauma. And my fear many times is that our resilience is coming sometimes from denial, many times from denial that we have problems. Because if it's not coming from denial, this hall should be packed, should be overflowing, because we have a problem. And as good Nigerians that we are, we often look at what others can do, what government is not doing, what religious leaders are not doing. We don't look at what I can do. And that's where my talk will focus. I remember sometimes in 2014, I was based then in Abuja. And that was, if you remember, if you know, that was part of the peak of the insurgents in the Northeast. And the April of that year, we had the Chibok experience. And towards the end of that year, there were many schools being raided in the Northeast. I was preparing to go to work. I was then working at the Catholic Secretariat here in Abuja. And the news was on, that very early news, and there were pictures of young boys who had been attacked in their hostel during the night. I was still in the shock of the Chibok, and now this, I just couldn't stop crying. And I said, we must do something. And in that panic, I still remember myself, I was shaking. So I started sending messages to everybody I knew, say, let's do something. We must do something. We can't just sit there and be looking. And everybody was sharing their experience, what they're already doing. And one of the people I called on that morning was the Bishop of Jalingo, sharing my desperation to do something. And he said, look, Anne, I woke up this morning, a few mornings ago, and saw troops of displaced persons entering Jalingo. And we didn't know what to do for them. So they got a storage, all these empty halls for storage, opened because it was a peak of Harmattan. They came with nothing. And you know, Harmattan in the Northeast is not a joke. And he said, we just didn't know what to do. So that's what we are doing. And we are carrying, we went to Chata Okrika to get some clothing for them. So I said, okay, we'll do something. The rest is story. We started mobilizing from Abuja to send over and all that. So what I'm saying is that we all have to respond to trauma. I'm not going to spend our time to try to analyze what trauma is. You already know that it's, and we are actually talking of emotional, what is not seen. And that is why it is dangerous, because you see somebody walking, because if somebody's leg is amputated or has a physical trauma, you see it. But the problem we are having is that the emotional trauma is not readily visible. And that is why it's a mental state and it has some symptoms. Some of the symptoms we see is that we see the person can get depressed, the person is anxious. Reverend gave us an example that even if they see the flask or is it the ma'am, or the color of what they saw in the camp, the person starts running, the person gets angry easily. And if you see Nigerians, when we get angry over a boss something, it's because we are all traumatized. You don't know the kind of fights we get into over very foolish things. It's a sign of trauma in our society. We find it difficult to feel safe because if your neighbor has been robbed, you can't sleep with your two eyes opened, you know. You have disturbed sleep, nightmares, you feel on edge. How many of us today are having high blood pressure, cholesterol? All these are signs of trauma. They are getting back at us physically. Excessive use of drugs, of alcohol, all these are signs of trauma in our society. We feel someone disconnected from one another because normally if you see somebody by the side of the road, you wanted to stop and take the person to the next bus stop. But now we don't do it. We are traumatized. We can't help each other. We can't look at each other with trust. You know, somebody is sitting near you, you are checking what kind of thing he's wearing, what he's carrying, and it's all fine signs of trauma. And that affects our interpersonal relationship. So how do we unpack all of this? For me, the experience I told you of 2014 transformed into what we now call Maria Center. And that's one of the responses we developed to the feeling of trauma. And Sister Sumter is now managing Maria Center. But we started it as one of the response to Maria Center in the IDP camp here in Abuja. Because when I went to the Northeast in 2014, people started calling me that the internally displaced people were already in Abuja and we didn't know. So one day I got in touch with some of my friends from Borno and they took us to Area 1, right in the heart of the city. There was already, and I'm sure it's still there. I'm no longer in Abuja, but I'm sure it's still there. There is a big center, a place where people just started settling. They just started living there. And one of the first things we did was to just interact. Let people talk of their experience. Let's be the ones to receive the pain, the anger, the frustration. So we created a space for listening. We encourage people to be true to what they are feeling, that we are not going to judge them. It's okay to feel angry. And I remember once, one of the things I noticed is that people don't cry easily in Nigeria. We don't cry. And I worked for 11 years in another country, in Argentina, where people cry very easily. So when I came, it was a trouble for me that these people don't cry, because in Argentina, if you've not seen a long time, you embrace and you cry. If you are happy, you cry. If you are sad, you cry. If the food is beautiful, you cry and thank the person. Everything we cry. Sister Sultan lived there, so she would tell me, she will bear me out. Now I came to Nigeria. People are going through terrible things, and they start being gidigba, no problem, no shaking. So one of the things is that when sometimes people tell me I started crying, I would cry. And they say, sister, don't cry. I said, I feel sad. And what I noticed is that created connection. People felt it is okay. It's okay to express even negative feelings as far as we are not injuring others. Because what we do unknowingly is that we deny the negative feelings. So it's propped up when we don't want it and when it could do damage to others. And we encourage creativity. One of the first things we started was making beads, because actually that came in because I noticed that the girls were visiting 3 times, 4 times a week. After about a year, many people started becoming pregnant because they were and we agreed to start doing beads. And it's such a fantastic therapy. Later, I discovered that because you don't need a big capital, just with a needle, some we need personal commitment, family, community, government, religious bodies, civil societies. I'm not going to go into the details, but one thing is this. Usually the person carrying the burden of trauma, especially in our society, might not even know she's carrying that burden. So we need to create a space where the person can express and we can identify what it is the person is suffering. So I'm going, because the imam and the pastor have spoken quite well on the Nigerian experience and on the religious experience. I'm going to run quickly to some of the issues that is also very particular to us. You know, in many countries in developed world, trauma could be a one-off thing that the person experienced this and it's over. But my dear brothers and sisters, in Nigeria, it's ongoing, isn't it? So we have to learn why we make the pressure that it should stop. The government should put an end to it. But we have to learn how to create a system of resistance and of resilience. And I always, talk of, how communities before dealt with issues. And I just give a very small example. One day I got to the IDP camp in Area 1. And normally there is a leader. So that day I got there and I saw a mark on the face with fresh blood. And I said, what's wrong with you? Say, one of the boys injured me. I said, boys? He said, no, one of our boys. I said, what was the problem? He said there was a little misunderstanding. And what is the little misunderstanding is that the IDP camp, the gifts came in and those from Borno said it was for them. And those from Kaduna and other parts said, no, let's share it. And there is a group who said, we must keep it. That's all. And one of the boys who really believed should be from his community carried the knife from his pocket and injured the leader. Now, that is a sign of trauma. We have a system where there is no system in place. But the community, so I asked the leader, where is the young man? He said, that's him sleeping. I felt the community failed. Because in the olden days, the community had rules, sanctions. They had a way of dealing with such things. But we are now in a system where our community's mechanism has failed. So I'm always hoping that when we talk of rebuilding our of trauma center, it will be community-based, so that these communities, those mechanisms we had before, that is now being transformed into OPC and Biafra and other, let us use them in a, how do I say, creative and constructive way. Because our lack of using community-based makes our centers, our responses parallel to what the community wants. So sometimes the community will even attack those who are working against trauma because they don't identify with it. So that is what I will ask our professors and academicians, researchers, that I hope the foundation is going to work on some areas of research, how we can use our community mechanisms to unpack trauma, to respond to trauma, and to make us a people of, healing. Let me just end with this particular two things. One is a poem I came across that says, trauma healing. You do not heal from trauma. When I saw it, I said, wow, that's what I am looking for, You simply come to know yourself as life itself. I'm sure if we ask Father Stephen, the mark of trauma is still in him, but he is life because he's generating life. And you turn towards the wounded place with love, because the wound is there. It's not taken away from your memoir. It's in the hard drive, but you look at it with love, and maybe the wound will always be with you. Maybe you will always walk with the hurt, but now you hold it. It doesn't hold you, because when trauma holds us, it controls our actions. When we hold it, we control, we determine what we do. You are the container, you are not the contained. It doesn't control you any longer, the wound, because it is drenched in awareness now, drenched in you, loved by you, even celebrated by you. Because as sad as it is, if not for that experience, Father Stephen, we wouldn't be here. So we celebrate that experience, as you said in your last quote. In every sorrow, there is a consolation. So I think that is one consolation. If you do not heal from trauma, you find healing in trauma. You find yourself at trauma's sacred core, the one who is always present. Now, I'm sure you connect with persons who have been traumatized the way you never connected before. The one who is always present, the one who can bear even the most intense feeling states and survive. An indestructible one, the infinite one, the powerful one, that is you. And last but not the least, I want to beg us, never be tired of creating connection and creating beauty. There is a Russian poet, Dostoevsky, who wrote a poem. At the end, beauty will save the world. Who doesn't like anything beautiful? We can heal, we can hold trauma when we introduce beautiful things, love, acceptance, non-judgmental. The jokes you make with Imam and the pastor, those jokes are beautiful because instead of them to create enmity, they bind, they create that bond even closer. So let us never be tired of creating beauty. And may God heal all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Sister Anne Falola.
There is a program we are having, the resilience program, because you said of we, the religious leaders, to look at ourselves to be able to offer healing. So in Ibadan, it's quite far. There is this program for resilience, especially targeting religious leaders, because we are beginning to have charlatans among us who just make use of this painful experience. So those who want more information about it, we are taking it serious. So we need to build resilience in order to heal trauma. I have the papers here. You can collect it and we can talk more about it. Thank you.
So much. Please, round of applause for Sister Anne Falola. Pardon my mispronunciation earlier on. Sister Anne Falola, thank you so much. I appreciate your word this morning, unpacking trauma and its social impact. You know, when Sister Anne Falola spoke about her experience in Argentina, something came to my mind that in Nigeria, we have seen shege promas. If you see shege promas, the tears gland or lacrimal gland automatically atrophies. So that's the main reason. So you can't see tears in Nigeria. They've not seen shege promas. Thank you so much. I appreciate your word on unpacking trauma. So we also like to call on Francis Onyekwe, who happened to be National Coordinator, Trauma Awareness Resilience Initiative. He was speaking with us this morning on the role of government in the effectiveness and the accessibility of psychosocial support. Please join me, welcome him with a round of applause as he comes down to the stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and good morning once again. My name is Francis Onyekwe. I happen to be the founder and national coordinator, Trauma Awareness and Resilience Initiative, shortly called TAR Initiative. I'm happy to be here, and I want to stand on the existing protocol, and I want to tell a little bit about myself. I want to follow the pattern of sister before I continue. And again, I want to use this opportunity to appreciate the pastor and the imam. Let's give them a round of applause, please. The reason why I say this is I am fortunate to meet you people today one-on-one, but I have heard about you. I have watched your program, your film called The Pastor and the Imam. Right away in Sierra Leone, when I was working in Sierra Leone, that was when I came in contact with that film, The Pastor and the Imam. Although the film, the volume was not good, but I appreciate the work you guys are doing. Amen. You have impacted on life. And your work have gone around the world. People have seen it. People are appreciating you people. Continue. God is your strength. And that's one of the positive side of trauma. It brings out the hidden nature in you. There was a guy that was in Sierra Leone with us. He was a businessman, a trader. During the war, he was amputated. And when the rebels get into hold of you, they will ask you, do you want short sleeve or long sleeve? That is long sleeve, they cut it from here. Short sleeve is from here. So they cut the guy's hand, he amputated his hand. He struggled and struggled, and finally we brought him home to Nigeria. And as I speak to you today, he has an NGO. He's one of the, his NGO is one of the NGOs that led the advocacy for the policy on disability. So his trader aspect had been packed. The inner strength of him came out as a result of the trauma. Okay, thank you very much. I am here to talk to us about the role of government in the effectiveness and accessibility of psychosocial support. But before we talk about the government role, accessibility and effectiveness, I want us to understand psychosocial support, what it means. And many times, a lot of people use the word psychosocial support. A lot of organizations, NGOs say they implement psychosocial support. But throughout my period of work on trauma, I have come to realize that most of these NGOs do the social aspect, ignoring the psycho aspect, either because they're ignorant of it or because maybe there are funds in that direction and things like that. And the thing that is happening continue to happen. Let's look at what psychosocial support means. I believe some of us knows the meaning, but let's look at it. To start with, when we talk about psychosocial support, this one word, but two words in one, psycho and social. Psycho literally means, when we talk about psycho, it's talking about the internal environment, your internal environment, what goes on within you. Are we together? That refers to the mind or mental processes of a person, which involves internal aspects such as feelings, thoughts, emotions, understanding, attitudes, and belief. This is the psycho aspect of it. When we talk of psycho, we talk about our mental processes. Now, the social, that's the external environment. This refers to human beings living together as a group in a situation in which there are dealings affect their common welfare. In other words, also means interpersonal relationships and what goes on in the natural environment, which includes interactions with others, social attitudes and values, culture and social influences of family, peers, school, and community. We cannot live in isolation. We live with people. We live with friends. We live with families. We live in a community. What affects the community or affects one person in the community affects the rest of the community, positively or negatively. Now, if somebody or a family is adopted in a community, that person, that family may think that the rest of the other communities connived. Lack of trust will disappear from that person. Okay? And that is the community. The reality of that family changes. The perception, the feeling of that family about the community changes. Hello? From the psychosocial framework of 2005 and 2007, it says of the International Federation, it defines psychosocial support as a process of facilitating resilience. Sister has spoken much about resilience within individuals, families, and communities by respecting the independence, dignity, and coping mechanisms of individuals and communities. Psychosocial support promotes the restoration of social cohesion and infrastructure. Social cohesion. Sister mentioned about it today. We don't trust one another again. Nobody gives anybody lifts. Even in our communities, even in Abuja, we build high fences to protect ourselves. We don't know our neighborhood. It's as a result of what we have gone through in the past. So, but when there is a fake around you. You take the case of drug addicts. It affects the family economically, if it affects the individual economically, it affects the neighborhood, if it affects the community, even the peers. Psychosocial issues pertain to conflict and kidnapping affect the relationship between man and the social environment in which he lives. Note, a well-implemented psychosocial support must be one which are based on the idea that if people are empowered to care for themselves and each other, their individual and communal self-confidence and resources will improve. This in turn will encourage positive recovery and strengthen their ability to deal with challenges in the future. What is it telling us? That when we implement psychosocial support positively in a proper way, people will be empowered, people will be enabled, so that when there's something that happens in future, they will know how to handle it. They might not be running head to head and looking for the imam and the pastor or religious leaders. Are we together? Now, as we are talking about psychosocial support, there are principles of psychosocial support. What are these principles of psychosocial support? One, I'm going to rush them through. I'm not going more into detail. Human rights and equality. When somebody has been violated and when somebody has been abused, when your fundamental human rights has been distorted, in providing psychosocial support, one of the principles is principle of human rights and equality. See that person, you providing the psychosocial support, see the person, the survivor, as a human being. You are not there to infringe on that person's human rights again. You are there to uphold the human right. You are there to see that person as a human being, that person has, no matter the condition, has the same right like you. Are we together? Second is participation. The person or the community you're providing psychosocial support to must participate. They must take part, right from assessment, design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation stages. In all the stages, they must take part. They must participate. They must get involved. And getting them involved shows sustainability. If you don't get them involved, you might not get sustainability. And when anything happens to them, they start looking for you. Build on available resources and capacities. Look for available resources within that community to use it to provide psychosocial support for them. Let me give you an example. There was a community A and community B, which can be your community you're coming from. Now, religious people came, introduced Christianity to them, to these two communities. They are not too far from one another. Now, one community was fortunate. The religious group that came built a church for them. The other community, community B, didn't have anybody to build a church for them, but they used their local resources and built their church. And they started worshiping. These people also worship. Something happened. There was a great rainfall, thunder, and lightning. Unfortunately, the two buildings collapsed. Both the church in community A and the church in community B collapsed at that very day. Now what happens? Within few days, community B went back and used the local resources within them and built their church back. Community B was waiting for the religious people to come and build their church for them. This is the essence. This is why we need to get them involved right from the assessment stage. And we need to make use of local resources available. Like Sister said, when they went to the IDP camp, they introduced them into bead making. Every fun activity they introduced them to. You don't need to go far. You don't need to do importation to get something to make bead. No, you source it locally. Non-stigmatizing services. You do not stigmatize them. There's what we do in Nigeria, especially Nigerian police. If they are here, pardon me. There's what we call re-victimization. Re-victimization. They re-victimize victims, Nigerian police. They blame you for going where you went. That thing happened to you. They blame you. Why did you do this? Why did you go there? Most times, people providing psychosocial support services find themselves blaming, stigmatizing their survivors, which is not good. Okay? Now, in psychosocial support, a lot of words are used. Words like psychosocial support services, psychosocial service delivery, psychosocial care delivery, psychosocial care, psychosocial informed care, etc. They all mean the same thing. Are we together? Are we together? Or am I talking to myself? Now, when you have provided psychosocial support services or psychosocial care delivery, what are you expecting? You now expect psychosocial well-being of the people, of the community. And what is psychosocial well-being? The Constitution of the World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. The Psychological Working Group suggests that the psychosocial well-being of individuals and communities is best defined with respect to three core dimensions. What are these dimensions? Human capacity dimension, social ecology, culture, and values. When you reference and recognize and respect the culture of the people, you respect their culture, because you may come to a community to provide psychosocial support, and that community is new to you. You need to respect their culture. You need to understand their culture. You need to be well informed about the people before you start doing it. Because if you're not well informed about the people, you might do something that will go against their culture. I give you an example. I was doing a training in one village in Sierra Leone. And when we come in contact with this kind of a situation, somebody gave an example. He said an NGO came to their community to implement a project, and they didn't care to understand their culture, the culture of that community. There's a river. When you go to that river to have your bed or to launder your clothes, you don't play music. But these people went there and started playing music, and their music, the system ceased. It was no longer playing. So upon inquiry, they now told them, and they had to apologize. And they did, what the community asked them to do to appease whoever, I don't know. So it is important, as you're providing psychosocial support in any community, even with the person, even if it's at individual level, understand the person, understand the people, understand the community. Now, we talk about psychosocial intervention. What is psychosocial intervention? Sometimes a person who is unwell starts to have difficulty interacting with society and needs some assistance to become well again. Psychosocial interventions are therapeutic treatment methodologies which are utilized when an individual exhibits problems interacting with others. The problematic behaviors may be due to the possible causes of adverse life experiences, substance use or mental health disorders. Psychosocial intervention models rely on different styles of therapeutic counseling. The difference between psychosocial interventions and psychiatric or medical interventions is that this methodology does not rely on pharmaceutical or medical assistance. Now, in Nigeria, sister said people find it difficult to laugh. To cry, which is true. I had that experience when I came back. We wrote a letter, the organization, to Education Board in Abuja to work with the schools to create awareness on trauma to them. That time kidnapping have not started. The letter landed somewhere in Otako, and I had to go there. I don't even know the terrain of Abuja then. Even now, I can't locate that office again. You know what the person I met told me? What are you talking about, trauma? None of our children is suffering trauma. Nobody is going through trauma. We don't need it. I was shocked. I was shocked. There is what we call childhood trauma. Childhood trauma. Adverse experiences you have had when you are growing up. And they were not healed. Nobody attended to them. It stays with you. It stays with you. And as you grow up, you start acting out. You start exhibiting them. Sister mentioned about our behavior. Aggressive behavior. The Nigerians are known for being aggressive. Yes. Why? Due to long traumatic experiences we have gone through in the hands of the military. It's like we were caged. And that is why we have not gotten it right yet, as far as democracy is concerned. We are so excited Anything we see is democracy for us, because there was long time of military dictatorship. We were caged. We didn't have freedom. It had an impact on us. That's what we call transgenerational trauma. And that is what is affecting Nigeria today. Transgenerational trauma. IPOB is there telling the history about what happened during the Civil War. The other people are there talking about Zoguku. Some people are countering it, it's not. So those things, when you hear it, you don't feel good. You want revenge, you want to come, but you don't have the opportunity. It's only when you have the opportunity you will revenge. Let's move on. Examples of psychosocial intervention. One is cognitive therapy. What is cognitive therapy? Cognitive therapy is a therapeutic approach that suggests that people are able to change their cognitions or thoughts in order to achieve an overall better quality of life. Now, when something happens to you, when something happens to us, when our life is threatened, when our life is in danger, the reality changes. Our reality changes. The way we perceive others changes. The way we see our society, our government changes. Now, the essence of cognitive therapy is to bring you back to reality. Is to reaffirm, reframe your mind to bring it back to where it was, so that you don't judge, you don't condemn. Two is individual counseling. Sister mentioned about counseling, which is very, very important. And we also call it talking therapy. Talking therapy is very, very important. But in this part of the world, we find it difficult to meet counselors. We find it difficult to meet psychologists. We find it difficult to meet social workers for counseling. Rather, we rush to pastors. We rush to our churches for counseling. I am not saying that pastors or reverend fathers don't counsel. They counsel. The only challenge I have with Pentecostal pastors is that some of them are not trained on psychosocial counseling. Some of them are not trained on trauma counseling. Instead of counseling, they now dictate to you what you do. Pastor, I'm sorry I have to say this. Okay. So, but the Orthodox, they go through this training. We sent letters to some Catholic churches to train their reverend fathers on compassion fatigue. What they need is compassion fatigue training and resilience, sister. You understand? But the next response you hear is that they have psychologists in their midst. No problem, it's fine. But how often do you visit them? Is the issue. Let's free our minds. Let's come out of denial. Sister mentioned it. We are suffering from denial. And denial can take you as long as it can go. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 1 month, 1 week, forever. And that is why today, so many of us, when we lose somebody, when somebody dies from us, we hold strong to them. We become attached to them. They have departed. They have departed. Why are we still attached to them? You are still in our heart. You are still in our memory. Because of denial. You have not processed that mourning. You have not. You are trapped in that denial. That is why. So individual counseling is very, very important. One-on-one. We also have group therapy or group counseling, whereby you put the people into group based on what they went through. You can't take somebody that went through sexual violence and bring that person together with somebody that went through kidnapping to counsel them. No, you put them group by group based on what they have gone through, the experience they went through, so that you'll be able to fast track their process, their healing process. And why do you do that? You're doing it because you want them to see, to know that they are not the only one trapped in that situation. In fact, it might even be that your own situation is better than the other person's situation. It empowers you to come out of it. Okay? Now, let's look at the benefits of psychosocial support. What are the benefits? Some of the benefits. One, psychosocial support helps in reducing the level of actual and passive stress that may prevent adverse psychological and social consequences among survivors of abuse or violence. Psychosocial support contributes to the building of resilience in the face of new crises or other challenging life circumstances. Psychosocial support heals the invisible wounds and restores the dignity of survivors. That's the logo of our organization, healing the invisible wounds. We heal the invisible wounds. This is one thing I don't like about I like a situation whereby you are given free time to talk. These things are affecting us every day. So there's no problem. I will try. I will round up. Who needs psychosocial support and at what point? It has become a norm that only survivors of violence, conflict in case of our country, kidnapping, women and children who have gone through one abuse or the other. Everybody needs psychosocial support, both at community level, family and individual levels, respectively. If we are all empowered with the knowledge of psychosocial support early enough before any disaster at our different levels, it means if peradventure anything happens, we can all come together at our different levels to help ourselves out before any outside intervention. Now, I always ask this question anywhere I go, because there was a time I went for training in, is it Taraba State or so? I asked them, is there anybody here that have not experienced trauma before? Some people raise their hand that they have not experienced trauma before. But trauma is as old as mankind. And the trauma is part of our life. You either experience it directly or indirectly. Secondary trauma or primary trauma. Now, the difference is in the application. That's the difference between psychosocial support and trauma healing. Why psychosocial support deals with the immediate issue or issues the client is presenting, trauma healing looks beyond the current issue, goes further to the past to dig out past unhealed trauma the client have gone through in life. This will help quicken recovery. Now, we also have essential skills needed for delivery of psychosocial support. What are these essential skills? You must be well informed. You must be able to transfer information to others. Should not have self-stigma, non-judgmental and openness, teamwork, ability to work with others, should be committed and reliable, should be a good listener, good interpersonal skills. You must have good communication skills, should be empathetic, emotional stability, have basic counseling skill, high degree of confidentiality, good time management. I want to stress a little bit on empathy. No, emotional stability. It will be an unfortunate situation if you're providing psychosocial support and the person you are rendering that service to narrates his or her story to you, and it happens that you have gone through a similar story and you break down crying. It's not good. So you need to be on top of your emotion. You need to control your emotion. Now, concluding, I want to mention some of this. So psychosocial coordination. More and more organizations are focusing on psychosocial support in response to crisis. It is very important to find out who the other active organizations are and whether a coordinating body or network group or psychosocial support has been established. Through coordinating efforts with other stakeholders will increase the potential coverage of psychosocial activities and reduce the risk of duplication. Coordination meetings are a good place to discuss common issues influencing the success of activities. One example of common issues would be how best to engage and retain community volunteers. Another is the stabilization of psycho-education training for frontline workers to ensure that they are providing the same information. Now, the big question is this, and I would like to have an answer. I may not know. One, do we as a country have psychosocial coordination framework, model, protocol? If yes, how does it work? Who is the lead agency? I want to know. If no, what can be done? Now, let's look at the role of government and accessibility, effectiveness and accessibility. I'm rounding up. One, government has provided enabling environment for both state and non-state actors with laws and policies to help them work in psychosocial domain. Before, we used to have lunatic laws, but now we have mental health and psychosocial support policy. And that lunatic law in those days talks about, let me give you an example. In the case of suicide, when you make an attempt to commit suicide, it didn't succeed. The government will take you to court. All the British colonized African countries. That's what the new lunatic law says. But now it's a different case. It means when you try to commit suicide and you didn't succeed, you will now suffer the consequences by going to face the law. But that's by the way. Government has also made it possible for both national NGOs and international NGOs to operate freely in providing psychosocial support. Government has, in its wisdom, created ministries, agencies, departments to provide psychosocial support, such as Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, Federal Ministry of Humanitarian and Disaster Management, and National Emergency Agency, Management Agency, State SEMAS, NAPTIP, etc. Past President Muhammad Buhari signed into law before leaving office the bill to professionalize social work in Nigeria, just awaiting the establishment of the council. There is provision for a psychologist in every primary healthcare center, which is good, but no social worker. Now, the challenge is, one, government should put the right people with the technical know-how to do the job. Social workers should be the ones heading and working in the institution set up to provide psychosocial support. More social workers need to be trained, no proper coordination. There should be a lead ministry or agency to coordinate. We may say Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, but what are the protocols? But what is the coordinating protocol? There should be a referral pathway designed to help implementation. NGOs and community people should be properly trained to deliver psychosocial support. It should not be left in the hands of professionals only. What do I mean? It should not be left in the hands of social workers or that claim to provide psychosocial support do more of social and less of psycho. Thank you very much for your time. God bless.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for Mr. Francis Onyekwe. Please, you can do better. Thank you so much for that brilliant presentation. We'll take a speech from Patrick Simon, the Executive Director of Old Trauma Victim Initiative. Immediately after, we'll take a song presentation from Holy Cross Cathedral. Please join me, welcome Mr. Francis Simon.
Thank you so much. I will like by saying I feel so honored to share the stage with the great speakers that have come before me. And most importantly, I want to say a very big thank you to the audience for your rapt attention and participation all through the program till now from start. And it's actually a difficult thing for me because great men have spoken about trauma and a lot has been said. I don't know if there is any other thing I'm going to say that will sound better or even close to what has been said already. So I'll be brief and I'm going to right away activate my skipping mode so that some of the information I wanted sharing, I'll be skipping. To start with, I'd like us to see if we can relate this trauma we have been talking about. And I'll ask you questions. For those of us that are here seated and following online, have we ever find ourselves in a crisis situation? Has there been anyone who has found himself in a crisis situation or having to help people who have been wounded because of a crisis situation, communal crisis, community, religious crisis, whichever? You find out that in one way or the other, you've been involved. Or have you ever seen an accident situation? Have you ever been part of the accident or need to help somebody who first-hand information? Have you ever seen someone who has been abused, molested? Or have you been, as a person, been abused once. So if you can relate to this, it means trauma is not bias. If you relate to any of these, it means adversity is not bias. And each and every one of us have had a fair share to it all. Having said that, we can now talk about how were we able to overcome those situations we found ourselves that we have just related to. I see it as a word that we have been hearing reoccurring, and it's called resilience. And that is why we come about with the theme of the event, embracing resilience. What have you done to overcome the situation you found yourself in? What if that situation you found yourself in, you are still in that situation? Can you survive it? Would you have survived it? And it's even more worrisome as a country that the government is supposed to come in and save us, or carry out some policies to just save us from the present situation. But instead, we still find ourselves in that situation. And when the government agencies come online or come on screen to talk to us, they keep repeating that the problem of our country is leadership. And then you want to ask, where do we grow to? Because the leaders are telling you the problem is leadership. It's just like the father telling his son, your problem, I am your problem, and there's nothing you can do about it. But then, what we can now do as a people, as a nation, as a government, we need to play along with, I remember Prince Nico Mbargi. I remember that song last night when I was struggling to know what to talk about. And in his song, I know some of us will relate to it. He said, sweet mother, I no go forget you. For this suffer will you suffer for me. If I want cry, my mother go shout, no, no, my pikin, make you no cry again. So stop. But then it's not about the song. He went further. If you go through the lyrics, you see him talking about how this mother was doing so many things just to ensure that this young man is okay. And I think that is where we need to come from as a country. We need to stop the blame game. Instead of pointing fingers, you are responsible for this, you are responsible for that, can we just take a role of a mother as a nation, as leader, as individuals, and then take action? Let's just do what we can do to help the person in problem, to help someone who is traumatized. I'm trying to round up as I'm skipping so fast. Lastly, I also remember listening to Vishan. Vishan is the CEO of Mindsville, and he made an analogy about ancient times, how they were unable to recognize the color blue. So for them to find out what was actually the problem, was it that the ancient people did not know about the existence of the color blue, or it actually never existed? Because in the literatures, you see them relating to sea with the color dark red. And throughout the literatures, there was nowhere it was mentioned the color blue. So they went to Namibia, the Himba tribe, and then they checked with them. And they found out that the Himba tribes have about 19 names for the color green. So in the experiment, they called the Himba person and asked him to identify those colors green. And he was able to quickly identify the different shades of green color. Then the next one, they now spotted some blue colors. So when he gets to the color blue, he skipped and then named the next green color. Now, the idea is we don't have to relate with any issue if we don't have a name to it. It's not existing. And I think this is where we need to work on our belief system as a nation. What do we believe in? Do we believe that Nigeria can be better? Do we believe that this traumatic situation we found ourselves, we can come out of it? Then we need to act like a mother and take action. Do the things we need to do. Lastly, I want to urge us all, just as most of the speakers have talked about, we don't want to relate with trauma. We always feel it's not part of us, but it's always there. And I think that is where that statement always comes: be a man. And you, with that, even when you want to cry, you will not cry again. Please, the least you can do sometimes is to ask for help. And that help will come. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Patrick Simon. Basically, I must confess that if you will have picked a career in music, you won't go far. Sorry, please. Sorry for that. You won't go far, but thank God. Others. So, yes. Yes. So, talking about song presentation, I think we have some lovely students here with us from Holy Cross Cathedral College. They will help us out with a song that will help us cope with trauma. Jamie, welcome the student of Holy Cross Catholic College, Warimpa. Beautiful. Welcome. You're welcome. You need the mic?
Good day, everyone. We are students of Holy Cross Catholic College, Gwarinpa to Abuja, and we are here to celebrate the World Traumas Day with you with our little presentation. Thank you. Today, we celebrate the World Trauma Day. Those who faced trauma in the past, we celebrate you. Those who are still traumatized, finding it difficult to get out of it, we celebrate you, and we await your quick recovery. Not those who went to war and back are heroes. Being able to survive this emotional stress, you are heroes automatically. We appreciate the family for the moral support and backup they gave to their loved ones who are traumatized.
Better, please. Round of applause, please. Do better. Thank you so much. Do better. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Student of the Holy Cross Catholic College, Warimpa. I would like to call on some of our panelists this afternoon. They will be discussing on mental health and psychosocial support, resolutions adopted by the UN General Assembly, contextualize need for trauma care center in the geopolitical zones of Nigeria. To join this conversation this afternoon, I would like to welcome Dr. David Ipoke, the head of the department, clinical psychology, Pace University, Abuja. Welcome, sir. Also, I would like to welcome Sister Anne Falola, the moderator of this session. You're welcome, sister. I also like to welcome Mr. Francis Enadoze, the National Coordinator of Trauma Initiative. You're welcome, sir. Also, join me welcome Dr. James Abel. You're welcome, sir. Also, join me welcome Dr. Ayotunde Elegbele. Sorry if I didn't get the name right. Correct me, please. And also, I would like to welcome our own father, all the way from Puka Center, Reverend Father Sistus Onu. You're welcome, Father.
Thank you very much. And as a good teacher, I like to pose questions. So I'm going to be posing questions, and thank you for putting yourself at our disposition, for making yourself available. Before I start, I want to thank Dr. Onyekwe for that beautiful paper. I got a whole. Okay. That means I'm prophesizing my brother Francis. It's a beautiful paper you just delivered. So I will start with Dr. Igbokwe, if you don't mind. Just to give us in a snapshot how we can include mental health services as an essential component of universal health coverage in Nigeria, because we tend to pay attention more to the physical. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here this morning. Hello? Hello? Okay, can you hear me, please? Excellent. So it's good to be here this morning. How can we integrate mental health service into the general healthcare package? First, I think we should begin to have open conversations with the National Health Insurance Scheme. Because I've worked as a psychotherapist since 2001. Most times in the hospitals I work, it's difficult to have more than 6 sessions of psychotherapy with clients. Their health insurance schemes would always say, we cannot support you for more than 4 sessions. We can't support you for more than 5 sessions. In fact, over the years, I've been able to make insurance companies pay for up to 10 sessions of cognitive behavioral therapy. So my thinking is we have to open a line of communication, have an open conversation with the National Health Insurance Scheme and all of the insurance agencies in Nigeria to begin to integrate mental health as part of their overall package. And then when people report to them that they have gone for psychotherapy, maybe 6 sessions, 10 sessions, 12 sessions at least, they should be able to reimburse the cost, because over the years they don't reimburse. So after treating the client, your money is hanging somewhere. You are not able to collect money from the hospital. You're not able to get reward for the service that you've provided. And part of doing that is also liaising with the Nigerian Psychological Association. Our dear Dr. Onyekwe mentioned earlier, he said he's not one. Of course, he spoke like one. He mentioned earlier that we should expand the number of people who are able to provide care. Yes, that's understandable, but in all sincerity, it's important to note that psychology and of course, psychotherapy is a regulated profession. It is extremely world over, not just in Nigeria. So whatever we want to do in this regard, we have to carry the Nigerian Psychological Association along. We have to carry the Nigerian Association of Clinical Psychologists along. We have over 500 clinical psychologists, about 500 clinical psychologists in Nigeria at the moment. So not that we have enough capacity, but we have at least the baseline group to start the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Igbokwe. Since we are still on a primary health issue, I would like to pose the question to Dr. Ayotunde, and it's how we could work towards integrating, how we could help skilled workers to be available in those primary health care centers, because some, especially in the rural areas, because we are still struggling to even have enough nurses and equipment to manage simple diseases. So how do we encourage skilled and competent mental health workers and to be available, especially in the rural areas?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, sister. Like Dr. Igbokwe said, we have at least a good number of mental health professionals or clinical psychologists. But one question I want to ask is, what happened to the psychology bill? Because I think that it's been passed, the bill for Nigerian Council of Psychologists, but it's not been signed into law. So that helps to regulate the practice. of psychologists, mental health professionals. And I think with that, people can be motivated, to want to practice, because that shows that incentives, that should be made available, at least to motivate people, skilled workers to want to work in rural areas. The bill will regulate that. All right. And for rural areas too, there should be provision of safe working conditions. So if you know that where you're going, you'll be safe. Okay, you have the modern facilities, the adequate, equipment and all of that to work, then that can also, motivate. And of course, remuneration and all of that, because I'm also asking, what does the average psychologist earn? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyway, I can just see that one major part is the security issue too in rural areas, not only for the mental health workers, but for the people and for even nurses and all those who help people in rural areas. We need to feel secured so that we could work for our people. Thank you very much. I'd just like to pose a question to Major James Edel, Dr. PhD. If we could help us to unpack the holistic approach we need to put in place for indigenous people. When we think of Nigeria, it's so vast. And just give us some clues on how to kind of tailor-make some of these approaches for the different indigenous peoples. Just some.
Hello, good afternoon. Looking at holistic approach, the summary of it all is, as a mental health professionals, being it a psychiatrist, a psychologist, the social workers, the religious leaders and the like, we should at all times know our boundaries. Okay. In other words, getting the appropriate professional that is well trained or well skilled in that particular psychosocial paradigms to handle that particular issues. I'll give you an instance. In an event whereby you have a trauma victim who display dissociative symptoms, or he or she may have some issues that has to do with psychotic episode. Now, the psychologist or the social worker may not have a key role to play there. The best approach for those other mental health professionals, the best thing for them to do is to refer. In other words, other mental health professionals should know their boundaries. They should know their skills. They should know their knowledge base in the services they provide. Because I've seen cases whereby some people claim to be psychologists when they are not. I've seen some people claiming to be social worker when they are not. And at the end of the whole thing, they end up re-traumatizing those individuals. In other words, without the appropriate skills, without the appropriate knowledge of that individual, there's no way the individual can provide holistic psychosocial support to the trauma person.
Thank you very much. It's true, many of us don't have a formal training in psychotherapy. But I always say that there are traditional wisdom that maybe the specialists who have the diplomas and can really help us to build into those native wisdom, as they call it, and native structures. But we'll come back to that at the second stage of the interaction. My next question will go to Father Sistus. Since we know that in Nigeria, religion is very important, and many people, before they even think of hospital or psychotherapy, they're either going to the mosque or to the church. So how can we do better as religious leaders to tackle this so that we don't end up with the charlatan, as our pastor and imam told us a few minutes ago? Thank you. Father Sistus, please.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I will be speaking from the point of view of a religious leader. Before Christianity and Islam came, in a few hundred years ago, Nigeria had existed, Africa had existed, people were living around here. Our presenter here said, trauma is as old as humanity. People had been wounded in many ways. People had been, traumatized, if you like. How did they handle it? People had mechanisms of how to handle it. They had no name of a social worker. They had no name of a psychologist. They were able to pull through. Was it that they were not traumatized? Was there no healing? How were they managing? That's where I would like to begin from. And then coming to the point where J.S. Mbiti says Africans are notoriously religious, and I think Nigerians are more guilty. We ascribe everything to God. The one we cannot ascribe to God will be the bad ones, which we accuse devil of being responsible for them. Those who are traumatized now go to churches, and they end up in the hands of a healer who uses them for church drama and acrobatics to make some money and put up some shows for the television. So there are a lot of things here. I think it was when Sister Anne was speaking, Reverend Hayab, and then when a couple of things I picked from what you have had to say. We have so many quacks in the field, whether it is the psychologists or religious. We have a lot of quacks out there. But these quacks, or the quackery itself, as much as it doesn't help issues, we must find a way. And to answer your question, trauma goes to church on Sunday and goes to mosques on Friday. It does not spare anybody. People are traumatized every now and then. Even while we are here, somebody who doesn't like what you're saying may feel a bit traumatized even, right? So trauma goes everywhere. So to come back to the issue, most of the times, I can't put a number to it, but most of the times I would say the priest, the pastor, the reverend sister, the imam, we are the ones, the first point of call, the first responders, as they call them. What do we do? Where do the religious leaders come in? How does religion play a role in trauma? Are we re-traumatizing those who are already traumatized? Are we helping the people? How do we help them? What can we do? How do we handle this better? You ask a question, but I'm making it rhetorical to say, I think a lot depends on us. And it now behooves on where can government regulations play a role here? I remember it was El Rufai. He's not a man I like so much in government, but something he attempted, which eventually didn't work. And I would have preferred it. In Kaduna, when he came in as governor, he said, for you to become a religious preacher, to avoid all the heresies and the hate speeches and all of that, you needed to be licensed. People kicked against it and knocked it down. But if you ask me, maybe that's where we should begin. And we should be asking the question, when people come to you and you are not competent to handle, especially when it comes to trauma, be humble enough, be responsible enough to refer them to the appropriate quarters. This will be my first reaction to your question.
Thank you very much, Father. Thank you very much. We continue to work to streamline, so that we overcome the issue of the quacks, I'll go back to Dr. Onyepoe. I know you gave a very beautiful plan. You have touched on some of these things. So in response to your paper also, I would like you to touch a little on how we as Nigerians can also overcome this denial. It seems we just don't want to accept that we are traumatized, and so we can't seek help, at least the majority of us. So,
thank you very much. It's important we talk about all these things: denial, resilience, or trauma. A lot of time, like I said in my presentation, people got trapped in denial. Now, how do we get out of it? Awareness creation. We need to let people understand that when something happens to you, own up to it, face it, accept it. You don't need to deny it. Yes, a small boy of maybe 5 years slapped a man of 20 years or 50 years. You don't deny it, accept it, face it. Yes, I've been slapped by this boy, but why did he slap me? Because most times we don't want to know the motive of the perpetrator. We don't, especially when it comes to the issue of forgiveness. Many a time we don't want to know the motive of the perpetrator, but it's important to know. I think Pope John Paul went as far as going to the prison to know why the boy shot him. Am I right? It helps you. You need to find out why the person did what he did. Because if you are the person, you may do worse than that person. Yes. So we need to also take excuses for others. We need to take excuses for others. People behave the way they behave because of the resources available to them. We need to take excuses for others. We need to attend to programs like this and listen, pay attention. Every day in our life, you must learn something new. You must learn something new. When you go home, ask yourself, what did I learn today that is new to me? If there's nothing new you learned that day, you didn't learn anything. We need to accept the fact that something has happened. We need to know the motive of the perpetrator. We need to create more awareness for people to understand that denial is a psychological problem. Denial is a psychological problem, and we don't need to be trapped into it. A lot of Nigerians today, a lot of us today have lost our loved ones, but we are still in denial that they are not yet dead. We are still doubting it. That is why you see somebody that died over 5 years. You still see in somebody's status, oh, you are still in our heart. They will print T-shirt, oh, your memory still lingers. You have not left, you are still in denial. During the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, a woman came up. What can the government do or the commission do for you to know that your child is dead or whatever? He said, my son promised that he will buy a white Mercedes-Benz for me, and my son has not been buried. I don't know where his grave is. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission bought a white Mercedes-Benz for her, bought a coffin, collected that guy's cloth and put in the coffin, and made normal burial ceremony so that the woman will come out of denial, will accept the fact that this person is dead. You see, most times I hope I'm not deviating, I tend to accept the fact of the way Igbos do their burial ceremony. Although it's expensive, but it helps them to accept the fact that this person is dead. You know, rushing to bury somebody can also make you to fall into denial. You understand? So when something has happened to you, you have gone through trauma, somebody has been raped. I understand the Reverend Father that founded this foundation was kidnapped. I don't know, I need to find out more. But he came out of it positively and established this organization. Yes, he accepted the fact that he has been kidnapped, but he came out of it, he's not dead. So I need to tell my story. I need to let others understand that you can still come out of it. You don't need to be trapped in denial. Are we together? So we either in the learning profession, academic profession, religious leaders need to, create more awareness. Let people understand there's no point being trapped in denial. Denial can stay with you for as many times, as long as it can, until you realize that, no, I need to let go. Let me give us an example. I lost my son in 2019 before the COVID at the age of 1 year, 8 months, due to carelessness of doctors at this hospital here. So after his burial, I was so attached to that boy, a small boy, but the bonding was too much. One day I had a voice. He said, do you know why Lot's wife found herself in that situation of becoming a salt? I pondered that. He said, because of attachment. Lot's wife was attached to the enjoyment, to the merriment, to the activities of Sodom. So when they were living, that attachment drew her back. She turned, and she turned into salt. So most times we need to, when there is separation, accept separation. When your loved one is gone, it's a separation, accept it. let that person go, you're a different person altogether. But the more you attach, the more you get into denial. So first and foremost, accept that this has happened, it has happened. Okay? Then talk about it. Talk about it to somebody you trust, not any other person, somebody you trust that can help you. Seek for professionals that can help you. Okay? If you can't talk, you can write. When you write, read over it, look at it. It will help you because you are pouring out. It's something that has gotten inside and it needs to come out. Are we together? So before I drop, I want to talk a little bit about the questions you posed before.
Okay.
Do I have the permission?
Short.
Shortly.
Short, very short.
I think, Sir Dr. Ibukwe, I think we need a lot of sensitization. And also, we need to, as Nigerians, yeah, we know we have professionals. Professionals can do the job, but we cannot be everywhere at the same time. I think we need to empower community people. And that is why, if you ask me, NGO work is succeeding in Southern and Eastern Africa more than Nigeria, because they have community mental health workers. They are not psychologists, they are not clinical psychologists, they are not social workers, but they have been empowered, trained on basic, things. When it comes to treatment, therapy, you make referral. And we establish referral protocol. So I think by the time we come to this in Nigeria, we'll have it easy and it will go down to community levels. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Pose the next question to you on that. If you just, what he said is dear to my heart, and that's actually one thing I would like OTBI Foundation to take note of. And each one of us here, don't let us live in denial. And this program, this time wouldn't have been wasted if each one of us can create awareness in our homes, in our institutions, as the fruit of today. So that's just trying to connect back to all of you listening to us. Now, Dr. Ibukwe, listening to all these situations in Nigeria, and you as a professional and aware of the UN General Assembly's mandate on the importance of psychosocial support, trauma support, how do we domesticate in Nigeria? Just taking from what Dr.
Onyekwe said. Yes. Before I touch on that very briefly, he mentioned community mental health workers, and the situation in East Africa is very interesting. A few weeks ago, I was in Kigali, Rwanda, and I tried to touch base with some of their psychologists. Do you know that they do BSc in clinical psychology, not BSc in psychology? Now, clinical psychology is a higher specialization. After your BSc, you go for masters in clinical psychology, and then if you want, you can go for a PhD in clinical psychology. But they do BSc clinical psychology. I was shocked. So when I asked a few people, how come you people have BSc clinical psychology? They now told me that after the genocide, 1994, that there was a lacuna. They didn't have community mental health workers. They didn't have psychologists. They didn't even have clinical psych. They didn't have anything. So the humanitarian workers started training them gradually because of the need, the large scale need, which is still there up to this point. Now they decided to jump straight into assisting the people. Of course, what are you going to do with basic knowledge when it's not going to help anybody in the community? So now they are equipped to be able to treat people who have mental health issues. And of course, the number of community mental health workers they have there has increased tremendously because of that action. Incidentally, we've not gotten to that place in Nigeria. We've not started having conversations around such possibilities. The challenge, the reason is obvious. You give an average Nigerian a mile, okay, a step, the person takes a mile. You give the person a mile and then it becomes something else. At the moment, we are still working on the psychology bill. And I'm sure once that is sorted out, some of these things would be addressed. And I would like to encourage Reverend Father Japa to, of course, open conversations with the Nigerian Association of Clinical Psychologists in terms of training. Sir, also, Dr. Onyekwe, your organization, open conversations. The president of the NSCP, Professor Abikoye, is an amiable person. He's open-minded. He's open to collaborations and all sorts. Whenever we have a conference, national conference, come around, make your presentation, tell us what you want, how you want us to collaborate with you. You're an NGO. You know, NGOs are able to move things. They're able to be where we can't be. Just as he said, we can't be everywhere. You know, I'm stuck here in Abuja. If you are telling me to come to Katsina and do something, first I'll think of my family, I'll think of my friends, I'll think of, so I might not even come. But you have people on ground that you can get in touch with the NSCP to help train them, to equip them with the basic knowledge so they go into the rural areas. That's how this community mental health service, how they begin to proliferate everywhere and they're able to help a larger number of people. How do we domesticate this document in Nigeria? This is a very amazing document. I've got it. Dr. Belge, he also scrutinized Dr. document. What do we think that we should do about this in order to get this across, in order to make sure that the document is domesticated? First and foremost, well, your opinion, I'm sure he's going to lend his voice to it when he wants to speak, and she's also going to do the same. But we have the opinion that it's important to have trauma centers in its geopolitical zone. For instance, we have the North Central. We have the FCT and Kogi State as possible places to explore, you know, when it comes to setting up a trauma center. We have the Northeast. Borno is there. That's a possible center to explore, a possible place to explore. We have the Northwest. Katsina is there. Of course, Kano is there if you want, but you know, we have places that we can explore in order to ensure that we have centers that people can turn to whenever there is an issue. And then we have, for instance, the Southeast. Enugu State is there. There is a possibility it's, you know, centralized of setting one there. We have South River State is there, you know, as a possible point for this particular center to be set up. Of course, for the Southwest, we have Lagos State as a possible and psychosocial support into humanitarian needs assessment. Whenever we are doing any needs assessment, it's important to add social support, right? Mental health and psychosocial support into it. And of course, I already spoke about National Insurance Scheme, NHIS. It's also important to ensure that we integrate mental health into it and then into other health programming, such as sexual, reproductive health, nutrition. Get our women, when they are going for their antenatal, right? Expose them to all of these mental health situations. We have noticed an increase in what's it called? Women who are, I'm trying to get the exact name. Yes, postnatal depression. Postpartum, rather, that's the word I've been trying to, yes. Postpartum, an increase in postpartum depression, right? So in order to assist in this regard, taking these to where they are going for their antenatal care and so forth would help greatly. And of course, providing capacity building, just as he mentioned earlier, that's Dr. Onyekwe, providing capacity building for community mental health, community health workers, mental health workers, should be engaged in. It's a very important area that we shouldn't shy away from. And of course, preventive promotional programs should be engaged in. these are things that would stimulate people towards caring for their mental health, and of course would help them to channel people that are in need towards where they are supposed to get the need. And of course, the kind of collaboration we are having today is something that is extremely, extremely important. And I want to once again appreciate Father Ojapwa and the Old Trauma Victims Initiative for this amazing, amazing event. The interesting part of it is, if you have missed it, I've told friends and loved ones that missing it, if you have missed it, you should go and watch the program and learn as much as possible from what has transpired today. So these are some of the things I think, or some of the ways I think we can get the information within the UN document domesticated within the Nigerian setting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's really comprehensive. And we feel what you think is important. And maybe some of you have some questions. So I have told Patrick to get some questions from you from the floor so that we include you. And someone has asked here, I don't know whether it's to a specific person, but the question is it possible to have free psychotherapy sessions within the community grassroots, since these centers are distant and quite expensive to our local communities? This is a real issue. That's why I'd like you to participate. You see that fantastic question, because we can speak all the grammar, and then it's only those who have money who can go, one, and two, it's too far from the people,
Yeah, thank you very much. In responding to that question, like the organization I work with, Trauma Awareness and Resilience Initiative, we do a lot free, even online. We had one case about before the COVID, and the client was in Benin, through WhatsApp. There was another issue in Abuja here. The lady said, I feel shy coming for a therapist. So we engaged her on WhatsApp, conversation.
Thank you.
So the NGOs offer this things free. But some cases, if you are not complying, they might ask you to pay some money.
Okay.
But you have to comply.
So let the other professionals defend themselves.
Funding is another major factor affecting mental health professionals in Nigeria. And looking at psychosocial model, is a brief psychosocial services you can provide to the host communities. Now, if I may understand the question very clearly, psychotherapy is a long-term services you may provide to that individual. Okay? So the only thing now we need to emphasize here more now is the aspect of funding. There's little the NGOs can do at the community level in terms of psychosocial support. Looking at the model, is a brief intervention. Anybody can provide that. But when it comes to psychotherapy is a long time intervention.
In Nigeria, we say at all, I'm bad.
So at least the person should prepare his mind. So I think what we should do at the community level, we can look at the referral pathways. In an event whereby the services that individual may require is not sufficient enough, the person should be referred up there.
Yeah.
I think that's what I think.
Thank you. There are many aspects to it. Thank you for that aspect and distinguishing.
The thing is, yes, what I'm trying to say is that psychotherapy, looking at the sections involved, it won't be possible without funding. Yes, sir. It won't be possible. But if it's psychosocial model support, it's a brief intervention. For instance, you want to provide psychological first aid, or brief coping skills, or brief coping resilience and all. This can be rendered for free services.
Okay.
But when it comes to psychotherapy, it's a long time services.
And the mosque and the churches do those free sometimes,
Yes, these churches, they have a role to play. They have a significant role to play also.
Thank you. It seems Dr. Igokwe wants to say something on that, or it's covered. Yes, yes, I have more questions here from the floor, and we'll stop at that so that we can round up with this. And what is your criteria for selecting the cities for trauma centers? I think quick barriers actually help people to release loved ones. These are two things. I think those choices are just random. It's not a decision. It's just saying, giving examples. When the NGOs working on this need to do, even to get the bill passed first, that we need this as a nation. This body cannot take a decision. It's just a random sampling, but it's a good question because we cannot just randomly decide this, you know. It's something very important. And I think with the second question, without going further, just touches on cultural differences, which is why community-based trauma care is important. For some, quick barrier helps them to deal with the trauma. And for another, the time in between helps them to deal with the trauma. And that's why it's got to be community-based and people involved. So I took permission to go on with the next one. Then verifiable research online shows that there is a high drug use in northern parts of Nigeria. Could we say there is a link between the trauma caused by constant terrorist attack with the drug use? Can somebody?
I will touch on it, and I'm sure he's worked in the North for a long time. Dr. James is also going to touch on it. Somebody a few months ago, I think, or a few weeks ago, on the clinical psychologists platform, we were talking about this drug use. And so you remember where Dr. Ben Agoha, a colleague at Covenant University, mentioned something very interesting. He talked about drug use as a form of self-medication. And that struck a chord. And I had to call him up, of course, as a colleague, I had to call him up to expatiate on it. I've worked with him and we've done studies together. So I said, what do you mean that it's self-medication? That anyone who uses drug is trying to medicate against something. There is something bothering the individual. So instead of going to the hospital, instead of sharing with another person, instead of the individual now decides to use this medication or drug to suit himself or herself. And in line with what Dr. Ben said, you know, his findings, I would say that more often than not, you know, people use it to deal with issues around them. So that could even be the case, just as you mentioned in the North, that people take a whole lot of drugs. That could be the case. Someone who is not a part of the panel is also grounded when it comes to drug abuse. Professor Debumi, who is sitting there, that is his area of research, and that he has trained on this particular drug use and so forth when it comes to UN and NDLEA. But I would think, just based on what the person said, that most people take drugs to self-medicate. You are passing through trauma, you don't have anybody to talk to, you don't want to go to a therapist, you don't want to go to the NGO to receive support. The next thing is to do what? Take illicit drug and then try to forget it for a few minutes, and then next time it might, you'll be able to deal with it adequately. Let me give Dr. James the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Just the last.
Yes, ma'am. In order to add to what Dr. David just said, you know, trauma itself, people going into substance use is in form of negative coping with trauma. Sometimes they go into drug use in form of masking the trauma. If you look at the symptom presentation clearly, for instance, maybe avoiding the episode, just like my senior colleague said here, maybe denial, Denial is also a negative form of defense mechanism and all. Sometimes some of these people that are traumatized, they may even have issues with anger. Sometimes some of them, they are bereaved. Sometimes some of them have issue with insomnia and all. And because of this intensity of maybe of the traumatic episode in them, the only thing they fall back to easily is substances. Sometimes some people say, okay, I'm bereaved. A family is just victimized and all. I think for me to overcome this, let me smoke cannabis. Let me treat tramadol. Okay, I find it difficult to sleep for spite some days now. For me to sleep now, there's a need for me to go into alcohol use. There's a need for me to smoke and other things. So the summary of it all is people taking drugs is not even the problem. Taking drug also is like, it's a form of fighting the traumatic episode. So they tend to cope negatively. It's a negative form of coping.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure we could sit here and continue. Thank you for your contribution. Before I let you go, I will still ask for last word from everybody who is on our panel. And if possible, give us one tip to overcome the stigma that goes with mental health so that we have a takeaway with us. Because many people run away from, or many people are in denial because our society associates stigma. And since I don't want to be stigmatized, I hide. I say I'm tough, I'm not in that situation, or I cope negatively. So just one thing or any other thing you want us to hear, but very short. I'm timing you all 1 minute each because I want to hear the 5 of you. Just one thing, each person.
Okay, in my own part, in terms of avoiding stigma, the individual should be accepted.
Yeah, thank you.
Mental health should be viewed as other health condition.
Thank you.
If mental health is viewed as other health condition, I think all these individuals will be accepted. The issue of stigma will be avoided.
Thank you. That's your own. Another person who wants to say something. So each one of us can do that. Each one of us knows somebody who is traumatized. Let's try to accept them. Yes.
I'll just continue where it stopped. So for acceptance, for instance, I think it would be nice to integrate mental health into primary health care. Like if hospitals, for instance, have mental health units. So as you go in, just as you treat physical health condition, you can go into the space and it takes care of your mental health condition. So there won't be any kind of stigmatization, around it.
Yeah, I make a joke about that. I'm from the Lagos end, and we all know when they say you are going to Arrow, it means you understand. If we can remove that stigma that the person is going to a hospital, isn't it? So because Arrow is the mental hospital and or Yaba, we know that. Whereas if it's just in a Lagos Island hospital, we know that you are just sick, you are going like anybody who has malaria, so that's one way to help us overcome the stigma, integration of the health cares. So those who are going to write policies, be hearing it so that we can be getting ideas. Yes, third.
Mental health is everybody's business. It's not just for the psychologists, not just for the NGOs, not just for the health workers or for social workers. It's everybody's business. You have to be able to know or feel the pulse of your neighbor at every point in time. And just to try that in this room, I want you to turn to your neighbor and ask your neighbor, how are you doing?
Engo, how are you doing?
You can say, are you doing good?
There's a joke in Argentina, if you say, how are you doing? They said, you have 2 hours.
So we should be able to feel the pulse of people around us. It's our business to take it as a serious business. That way people won't feel isolated. I was speaking a few days ago and I told them about a colleague, a former classmate who stays in the UK. He said he walked for over 30 minutes. She said she walked for over 30 minutes looking for someone to give her a hug.
You
She
see.
couldn't find any. She went back home, cried over the whole situation, waited for her husband to come back and her family members to come back to give her a simple hug. Now, I'm not advocating for you to go around looking for people to hug, you know, or hugging people, but just ask people, how are you doing? Just that question alone could mean the world to them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, especially in our cities. Let us take those little gestures, greeting, smiles, connection. Thank you for that. That takes away the stigma. Thank you.
I'm sure that nobody has kept to the 1 minute, so I'll try and see how I can manage that. My 1 minute.
I trust you.
Okay, my final word on this. Trauma is not only demon to be cast in the religious places. See trauma, life situation that you can deal with counseling. Religious leaders must be aware of that. Before you jump into casting demons and binding, speak to the person, counsel the person. Counseling is a fundamental part of our ministry. And to say that, now that we're in the university setting, I like to make this appeal, and I hope it's well with you. We are the culture of chaplains in our universities. You still need chaplaincies in the universities because you need us, the religious leaders. After all your classroom work, you still need the students to listen to the spiritual part. Who wants to do that? Academics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we should draw the line between mental health and spiritual issues. You know, sometimes we think everything is spiritual. Also, that's something to help us overcome the stigma. And last but not the least, Dr. Onyekwe, I trust you. You will give 1 minute.
Okay, just to correct one impression, mental health has been integrated already because every primary health center have a psychologist unless that person didn't go. Oh, maybe that's, but on paper it has been integrated.
On paper.
Then I say this anywhere I go. Maybe for us to scale up mental health in Nigeria, we need to set up an agency under Ministry of Health. Like you have NAPTIP, you know, combating traffic victims. If not, Nigeria will not take mental health issues serious. I think we need to have an agency separate from Ministry of Health. Anywhere I go, I say it. And I think we should start campaigning on this. Lastly, my last word. Please, whatever that happens to you, do not stigmatize yourself first. Self-stigmatization is dangerous. And it's when you stigmatize yourself that other people will stigmatize you. And you will recognize that they are stigmatizing you. That's one. Lastly, what is it? What is it that makes you happy? What is it that makes you happy? Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. If it's somebody that you need to call that will make you laugh and happy, call the person. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so wonderfully. And I will integrate the agency. When HIV was an epidemic in Nigeria, they started NACA, and it has helped us.
Yes.
We are one of the best now in Africa.
Exactly.
So if we really want to tackle this, we can push for an agency.
Exactly.
For mental health.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, and may God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. God bless. Thank you.
So much, Sister Anne. Thank you so much. Please, a second round of applause for the speakers, at least for the panelists. This is the panelists. Thank you so much for the beautiful section of the millennial law today. Have a lot of takeaway. So we'll briefly move to the next item on our agenda. We'll be having a drama presentation by the Base University Chartered Drama Group, raising awareness of mental health and trauma. You're welcome, please. A round of applause as we welcome them to the stage.
Good morning, Mommy.
Good morning.
Mommy, I told you about a textbook that I needed to buy yesterday. I don't know if
Stop. Tell your father I'm not getting any textbook. Please, you gave birth to her, you sent her to school, you should provide for her. Promise me, I'm not going to get you anything. You sent her to school. You told her to go and study medicine, so why won't you get her the textbook? Please, don't come and talk to me.
That's not my wrong.
Come to me first. I don't know why you have such a certain excuse of a man for a father.
I used to live. No,
You leave this place. I'm done. I'm out of this house.
get out now.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I swear that's so annoying. Like, can you imagine? Hi, please. Why are you shouting? Why shouting? Thank you. Okay. No, sorry, I can't give you. No. No, I can't give you. I said no, I can't give you. I gave you the last textbook. You couldn't return it. No, please. Please, I beg, get out.
What is it?
Knock, knock. Good afternoon, ma. Good afternoon, ma. Sorry, I'm sorry for disturbing you.
Yes, speak. What do you want?
The anatomy assignment gave us yesterday. I won't be able to get my textbook by tomorrow. So I was wondering if I could borrow a spare one that you have.
So you left all your colleagues to come to my office to disturb me for textbook after I've given you guys assignments.
I'll just return you by tomorrow.
You are wasting my time. What do you want? Are you deaf? Are you dumb?
Please, can I if I don't get this textbook from you, I'll not be able to get the.
That's your business. You're going to fail this course. I'm going to give you a carryover. You don't have attendance. You don't have anything. Why are you here? Sorry for yourself. There's nothing I can do for you. Why have you decided to make yourself a failure? Do you know you are a failure? Look at you from head to toe. You don't have assignments. You don't have anything. Why are you here exactly? Sorry for yourself. Don't disturb me.
Anita, how are you doing? Yes. I just want to go straight to the point. So you know those sexy pictures you sent me on Saturday. Yes, those news. You know now. I just got to tell you that I'm going to pick them, but wait. Just wait. All you need to send is 100,000 naira.
100,000. What is getting 100,000 from you? You know.
I need to eat. I'm sorry.
You said it up.
Kuda Bank 0024.
Just useless. How did I get myself in this situation? I just was trying to how did I get it? But who like 100,000 naira from? I don't I trusted MS. I said, you know, I don't even think this cannot be in this world. My friends will not even talk to me, so they're always insulting me. I just need to end it all. I'm just going to end my life. Mommy.
What's happening? What's happening? See what's happening? Where's your father? What's happening? Wake up.
What?
It's not because you buy her textbook. I'm so sorry. Wake up. Wake up, please. Wake up. Is she dead? Is that what you just asked me? About mental health, it goes down to our social, emotional, and psychological well-being. It affects us all. Sometimes we hide behind our beauty and appealing at physical appearances to see that people are hurting behind closed doors. We are all equally responsible for each other's mental health because we exert an influence on each other. The way we talk to people, the way we treat people, the way we react to people, we have an influence. Studies show that more than 1 out of 5 people struggle with mental health and mental illnesses. What do we do with this information matters. Because we know more, we have to act better. We have to make ourselves aware of this. We have to educate ourselves and educate others on this prevalent matter that plagues our society. It is important to take matters into our own hands. Be nice to people, show love to people, be compassionate to people. And just as Dr. Francis rightly said, let us also inculcate the referral protocol. Let us stand as pillars of hope to people. And when it goes beyond what we can offer, let us refer them to medical professionals that can help. Let's stand in the gap and bridge this problem that faces our society. Let us love, let us be kind, let us be supportive and encouraging to one another. Mental health is everybody's problem. Thank you.
Watch chapter of the first presentation. Thank you so much for that beautiful presentation. And now, I would really like to call on the director of OVIT, Reverend Father Stephen Ojapa, for his vote of thanks. Round of applause for Father. Don't get tired, please.
Well, I'm not the director for OTVI. That is the director. Patrick Simon is our honorable director. But I would like to say a word of thanks. I don't know how to start really because I'm really touched and amazed. It has been an amazing presentation. Beginning from our participants online, I see a lot of them who started and are still part of these presentations online. Carolina from the US, I really thank you. I've seen you all the way from Washington, and a host of them, Andres, I can see them, yeah, O'Donnell from the US, Indiana, I can see Cecilia, Antonia Obansi from Lagos, Ibn from Sokoto, Samanda, Adiola, Debita Hassan, I can see them. So thank you for staying put throughout these presentations. And Pace University, we have started a partnership. We intend to come here, inshallah, next year, 17th of October, unless something happens. We thank you, the student group, for your wonderful, short, precise, brilliant presentation. Thank you for your words. You spoke like you preached. So brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. And to the drama group, thank you also. And to our esteemed panelists, Major, all of us who joined at the panel conversation. Sister Anne Polola, you've been a darling. Thank you. My big brothers, Pastor and Imam, thank you. Dr. Francis, you're amazing. Your content was so rich. Thank you for those wonderful words. It has really touched me. And thank you so sincerely to the committee here in Bayes University. Professor, I don't know whether I should call her professor, who actually helped us with the connection. Joanne, she was the one who opened the gate for us to enter Bayes University. Through her, we got in touch with Dr. Iboke and Dr. Chai, and they have been wonderful. Thank you sincerely for the connection. We really appreciate it. And to your staff and students, I assure you, we shall come back to this university, inshallah, next year, 2024, unless Tinubu decides to end Nigeria. But if he allows us to be in Nigeria, inshallah. So thank you once again. We are supposed to have lunch at the end of this conversation. The lunch should be on the way. Please don't be in a hurry to go. If you have been part of this, for those who are online, please after this, just go. If you're online, just go. We don't want wahala, you have tried. But those who are on this one, please, we have something for you. Don't be in a hurry, just hang around. Let's keep talking. We're going to have some good pictures outside after this. Just come back once the food is ready. You cannot take your bath. But sincerely, Mungodi to say, Allah isam kwa albarka duka. Thank you.
Father, thank you so much for the beautiful sharing my afternoon with you all, with viewers online. Thank you so much for this wonderful section. I'm grateful. I've learned a lot. Today is World Trauma Day. I'm definitely learning something. Can you ask me about how are you? Hope you're fine. Thank you so much one more time. It's a pleasure to be here. God bless you. Sophie. Bye for now.
Attention, attention. I need your attention. I'm about to introduce to you the hardest DJ that ever lived. Nobody asked, but I'm talking about one person, the February DJ. DJ said it's about to take the booty bounce at the right.